Dr. Sarah Chun wiped sweat from her forehead as she pushed deeper into the Amazon rainforest. The humidity clung to her like a second skin, and every step squelched in the muddy ground beneath her boots. She had been tracking reports of unusual animal behavior in this sector for 3 weeks, following local guides who spoke of strange lights and animals acting differently than normal. The research station had been skeptical when she proposed this expedition. Waste of resources, Dr. Morrison had called it. Chasing ghost stories instead of focusing on real conservation work. But something in the local testimonies had convinced Sarah there was more to investigate. The indigenous communities rarely spoke of such things without good reason. A low whimper caught her attention, so soft she almost missed it over the constant symphony of jungle sounds. Sarah stopped, holding up her hand to signal her guide, Carlos, to halt behind her. The sound came again, weak and desperate. She followed it through a tangle of vines and fallen logs until she found the source. Lying beneath a massive cecropia tree was the most beautiful creature Sarah had ever seen. An albino leopard, its coat pure white with barely visible rosettes, struggled to breathe. Blood matted the fur along its left flank, where deep gashes suggested an encounter with something large and aggressive. The animal's pink eyes, clouded with pain, fixed on Sarah with an intelligence that made her breath catch. Dios mío, Carlos whispered, crossing himself. The spirits have marked this one. Sarah dropped to her knees beside the leopard, her training taking over. The wounds were severe, but not immediately fatal if treated quickly. She opened her medical kit, grateful she had insisted on bringing the full emergency supplies despite the weight concerns. Easy, beautiful, she murmured, extending her hand slowly. The leopard sniffed cautiously, then allowed her touch. Its breathing was labored, but it made no aggressive moves as Sarah examined the injuries. The wounds were strange, too precise to be from another predator, too clean to be from thorns or branches. They almost looked deliberate, as if something had marked the animal intentionally. Sarah pushed the thought aside and focused on cleaning and treating the gashes. Working in the jungle heat for 2 hours, Sarah stabilized the leopard's condition. She administered antibiotics, stitched the worst wounds, and set up in 4-drip using supplies she had meant for human emergencies. Carlos helped construct a makeshift shelter from tarps and branches. The research team will not approve of this, Carlos said quietly as they worked. They will say you waste medicine on an animal. Then they can say it to my face, Sarah replied, adjusting the foreline. This leopard is a genetic miracle. Albino big cats almost never survive to adulthood in the wild. The fact that this one made it this far means it's extraordinary. As night fell, Sarah made the decision that would change everything. Instead of leaving the leopard with basic first aid and hoping for the best, she radioed the research station for an emergency extraction. The conversation with Dr. Morrison was heated. Absolutely not. His voice crackled through the radio. We are not using our helicopter to transport a wild animal back to the station. This is a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, Sarah argued. An albino leopard that survived to full maturity. The genetic studies alone could revolutionize our understanding of feline evolution. It's a waste of resources, Chun. Treat it in the field and move on to your real research. Sarah looked at the leopard, now resting more comfortably, but still critically injured. Those pink eyes seemed to watch her with something almost like hope. She made a choice that went against every protocol in her contract. Then, I'm using my personal emergency beacon, she said. I'll pay for the extraction myself. The silence on the radio stretched long before Morrison's angry response. This will go on your permanent record, Chun. This kind of bleeding heart nonsense has no place in serious research. 3 hours later, a private medical helicopter arrived, its pilot shaking his head at the unusual cargo. The leopard remained surprisingly calm during the flight, seeming to understand that Sarah was helping. It never once tried to bite or scratch, even when the helicopter's movements caused obvious discomfort. At the veterinary facility in Manaus, Dr. Elena Vasquez examined the leopard with growing amazement. The genetic markers are incredible, she told Sarah. This isn't just albinism. There are cellular structures I've never seen before. Where did you find this animal? Sarah described the location and circumstances, watching as Elena ran test after test. The leopard submitted to examinations with unusual patience, always keeping Sarah in sight. When she moved around the room, its head tracked her movement. When she spoke, its ears swiveled toward her voice. There's something else, Elena said, pulling Sarah aside. The wounds you treated? They weren't made by any animal or plant I can identify. The precision is too exact, almost surgical. And look at these scans. The X-rays showed the leopard's bone structure was perfect, its organs functioning at levels that suggested peak health despite the recent trauma. More puzzling were the small metallic objects embedded in its skull, too small to be seen without advanced imaging. What are those? Sarah asked, pointing at the tiny structures. I have no idea, Elena admitted. They appear to be integrated into the brain tissue, but they're not causing any damage. In fact, the brain activity around them is enhanced. This leopard is showing cognitive patterns I've never seen in a wild animal. Over the following days, Sarah spent every free moment with the recovering leopard. She had named him Ghost for his ethereal appearance. The veterinary staff was amazed at how quickly he healed, and even more surprised by his behavior. Ghost seemed to understand human speech better than most domestic animals. He responded to his name, followed simple commands, and showed what could only be described as affection towards Sarah. It's like he knows you save his life, Elena observed as Ghost pressed his massive head against Sarah's hand. I've worked with big cats for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Sarah felt a deep connection to Ghost that she couldn't explain. When she looked into his pink eyes, she sometimes felt as though he was trying to communicate something important. The sensation was so strong she found herself talking to him as if he could understand every word. You're going to be okay, she told him one evening as she sat beside his recovery enclosure. But I can't keep you forever. Once you're healed, you'll need to go back to the wild where you belong. Ghost's response was a low rumble that sounded almost like disagreement. He moved closer to the enclosure's edge, pressing against the mesh that separated them. Sarah reached through to scratch behind his ears, and he closed his eyes with what looked like contentment. 3 weeks later, Dr. Morrison arrived in Manaus with orders to end Sarah's unauthorized project. He was furious about the costs, the media attention the albino leopard had attracted, and what he called Sarah's unprofessional attachment to a research subject. This ends now, he announced. The animal goes back to the wild immediately, and you return to your assigned duties. Sarah had known this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared for how much it hurt. Ghost seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. His calm demeanor shifted to alertness, and he began pacing his enclosure with obvious agitation. The transport back to the original location was tense. Ghost rode in a specially designed crate, but his distress was obvious. He called out repeatedly, a sound Sarah had never heard from him before. It was almost like he was trying to tell her something urgent. When they reached the release point, Ghost emerged from his crate slowly. He was fully healed, his white coat gleaming in the dappled sunlight. For a moment, he stood perfectly still, looking directly at Sarah. Then he did something that made everyone freeze. Ghost approached Sarah and gently placed one massive paw on her shoulder. The gesture was so deliberately human-like that the entire research team fell silent. His pink eyes met hers, and Sarah felt that same sense of communication she had experienced before, stronger than ever. "Thank you," she whispered, not caring how foolish it sounded. Ghost held her gaze for another moment, then turned and walked into the jungle. But before he disappeared completely, he looked back one more time. The expression in his eyes was unmistakable. This was not goodbye. As the helicopter lifted off, Sarah watched the canopy close over the spot where Ghost had vanished. She had no way of knowing that her act of compassion had been observed by entities with technology beyond human understanding, or that Ghost was far more than he appeared to be. She certainly couldn't imagine that this moment would be remembered as the first step toward humanity's greatest adventure. All she knew was that she had saved a magnificent creature's life, and somehow, in doing so, he had changed hers forever. The mysterious metallic structures Elena had found in Ghost's brain scans would remain unexplained for now, classified in files that would gather dust for years. But deep in the Amazon, Ghost moved through the trees with purpose. The rescue had provided valuable data about human compassion and individual moral courage. The enhancement protocols had worked perfectly, allowing full integration with human emotions while maintaining core mission parameters. Soon, it will be time for the next phase. But first, Ghost had a report to transmit to coordinates far beyond Earth's atmosphere, where patient observers had been waiting for proof that humanity might be ready for contact. The real test had just begun. 5 years had passed since Sarah Chun last saw Ghost in the Amazon. The memory of those pink eyes and that final, too intelligent look haunted her dreams. She had tried to return to normal research, but nothing felt the same. Her colleagues still whispered about her leopard incident, and Dr. Morrison made sure it affected every performance review and grant application. Now she worked at the International Wildlife Research Institute in Costa Rica, studying jaguar populations. It was good work, important work, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant for something bigger. The metallic structures Elena had found in Ghost's brain scans remained unexplained in classified files, despite Sarah's repeated requests for follow-up research. The morning everything changed started like any other. Sarah was reviewing camera trap data in her office when her assistant, Miguel, burst through the door without knocking. "Dr. Chun, you need to see the news immediately," he said, his face pale with excitement and fear. Sarah followed him to the break room, where a crowd of researchers stared at the television screen. The CNN anchor's voice was steady, but Sarah could detect the underlying tension. Confirmed sightings of unidentified aircraft over major cities worldwide. The objects appeared to be of non-human origin, measuring approximately 2 kilometers in length. They maintain perfect hovering positions at 15,000 feet and have not responded to any attempts at communication. The images showed sleek, organic-looking ships that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Their design was beautiful and alien, with flowing curve that suggested they had been grown rather than built. Sarah felt her heart racing as she watched the footage. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Reeves from the Mammal Behavior Department. "First contact. We're actually seeing first contact." The news continued with reports of worldwide panic, military scrambles, and emergency government sessions. World leaders called for calm, while frantically trying to establish some form of communication with the visitors. Every attempt had failed. The ships simply hovered in silence, waiting. Sarah was about to return to her office when her satellite phone rang. The number was blocked, but something compelled her to answer. "Dr. Sarah Chun?" The voice was crisp, professional, and completely unfamiliar. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Director Hayes, and I work for a government agency you've probably never heard of. We need you in Washington immediately. There's a situation that requires your specific expertise." "I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong person. I study jaguars, not alien spacecraft." There was a pause before Hayes spoke again. "Dr. Chun, this concerns a white leopard with pink eyes. We'll have a plane waiting for you at San Jose Airport in 2 hours." Sarah's blood ran cold. "How do you know about Ghost?" "All will be explained when you arrive. Pack for an extended stay, and Dr. Chun, tell no one about this conversation." The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her mind racing. How could a government agency possibly know about Ghost? And what connection could her rescued leopard have to alien spacecraft? 2 hours later, Sarah found herself on an unmarked government jet, flying toward Washington with more questions than answers. The other passengers were clearly military or intelligence personnel, but none would speak to her beyond basic courtesy. At Andrews Air Force Base, a black sedan waited to transport her to a facility she had never seen before. The building looked like any other government office complex, but the security was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Multiple checkpoints, biometric scanners, and guards with weapons she didn't recognize. Director Hayes turned out to be a stern woman in her 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. She led Sarah through corridors lined with monitors displaying global news coverage of the alien ships. Dr. Chun, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels, Hayes said as they walked. 5 years ago, your unauthorized rescue of an albino leopard was observed by parties unknown. That leopard was no ordinary animal. They entered a briefing room where a large screen displayed satellite footage of the Amazon. Sarah recognized the area where she had found Ghost. Show her the enhancement, Hayes instructed a technician. The image zoomed and clarified, revealing details that should have been impossible to see from orbit. There, in the canopy, was Ghost. But he wasn't alone. Surrounding him were lights that pulsed with the same energy signature as the spacecraft now hovering over Earth cities. The metallic structures your veterinarian found in the animal's brain scans? Hayes continued, they're not from Earth. Our best analysis suggests there's some form of biological interface technology far beyond our current understanding. Sarah sank into a chair, overwhelmed. You're saying Ghost was what? An alien? We're saying the leopard you saved was enhanced by aliens, possibly as some form of test or preparation for contact. And Dr. Chun, 20 minutes ago, we received our first communication from the visitors. Hayes nodded to the technician, who played an audio file. The message was brief, transmitted simultaneously to every major world capital. We seek the human called Sarah Chun. She will speak for your kind. Bring her to coordinates that will be provided. She will not come alone. The White Guardian will accompany her. Sarah's hands trembled as the implications hit her. They want me specifically? But why? We believe your act of compassion toward their enhanced agent demonstrated something they were looking for in humanity, Hayes explained. You risked your career and resources to save a single injured animal. To them, this may represent the moral character they need to see before making contact. The briefing room door opened, and 2 soldiers entered escorting a transport crate. Sarah's heart nearly stopped as she heard a familiar low rumble from inside. We retrieved him this morning from the coordinates they provided, Hayes said. He came willingly, almost as if he was expecting us. The soldiers opened the crate, and Ghost emerged. He was magnificent, even more beautiful than Sarah remembered. His white coat seemed to shimmer with an inner light, and those pink eyes immediately found hers across the room. Ghost approached slowly, and Sarah could see that he moved with a new grace, an almost fluid quality that suggested the enhancements had continued developing over the years. When he reached her chair, he did exactly what he had done 5 years ago in the Amazon. He placed one massive paw gently on her shoulder. But this time, something extraordinary happened. Images flashed through Sarah's mind, not her own memories, but Ghost's. She saw vast starships moving between distant suns, civilizations of beings who looked remarkably similar to Earth's large cats, and, always, watching everything, the patient observers who had been studying humanity for generations. You can communicate with him, Hayes said, watching Sarah's expression. The neural interface allows for limited telepathic contact with compatible humans. You're the only person on Earth who has ever bonded with him to this degree. Sarah looked into Ghost's eyes and felt a flood of information. The aliens called themselves the Kethura, and they were indeed feline in origin. They had been watching human development for centuries, waiting to see if humanity could evolve beyond its violent tendencies. The test was simple. Would humans show compassion to other species even when there was no benefit to themselves? Sarah's rescue of Ghost had been observed and evaluated. Her willingness to sacrifice her career and resources for a single injured animal had marked her as someone who could represent humanity's better nature. The Kethera had decided she could be trusted to speak for her species. They want me to be humanity's first ambassador, Sarah said aloud, still processing the mental connection with Ghost. The coordinates they provided are in the Nevada desert, Hayes explained. The ship will land there tomorrow at noon. You and the Leopard are to board alone for initial contact. Every world leader wants to send representatives, but the aliens were specific. They will only speak with you. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I somehow make this worse? Ghost pressed closer, and another wave of images filled her mind. These showed the Kethera's history, their own struggles with aggression and territorial conflicts, and their eventual evolution into a peaceful, spacefaring civilization. They understood humanity's potential because they had walked the same path. They're not here to judge us harshly, Sarah realized. They're here to help us grow. But only if we prove we want to change. Hayes nodded. Our analysis suggests the same thing. But, Dr. Chun, there are elements within various governments who see this as an opportunity for military advantage. Some people want to capture the alien delegation, study their technology, potentially use it as a weapon. That would be the worst possible mistake, Sarah said, feeling Ghost's agreement through their mental link. They have safeguards. If humanity shows aggression, they'll leave and never return. This may be our only chance. The next few hours passed in a blur of briefings, medical examinations, and preparation for the most important conversation in human history. Sarah tried to learn everything she could about diplomatic protocols, but Ghost's presence in her mind suggested that formal procedures would matter less than genuine honesty. As dawn approached over the Nevada desert, Sarah stood beside the landing site with Ghost at her side. Military personnel maintained a careful perimeter, but the aliens had made it clear that any aggressive action would end the contact immediately. Are you ready for this? Sarah asked Ghost, though she knew he could sense her thoughts. His response came as feelings rather than words. Confidence, anticipation, and something that felt remarkably like pride in her. She had passed their test 5 years ago, and today she would help two species take their first steps toward understanding each other. Above them, the massive ship began its descent. Sarah took a deep breath and prepared to speak for humanity. Everything that happened next would determine whether her species joined a galactic community or remained isolated forever. The real conversation was about to begin. The Kethera ship settled onto the Nevada sand with absolute silence, its organic hull adapting to the ground like a living thing taking root. Sarah felt Ghost tense beside her, not with fear, but with anticipation. Through their mental link, she sensed his excitement at seeing his creators again. The ship's surface rippled, and an opening appeared where none had existed before. 3 figures emerged, moving with the fluid grace Sarah had noticed in Ghost's enhanced movements. They were humanoid, but unmistakably feline, standing 7 feet tall with luxurious fur that shifted color in the morning light. Their faces combined human intelligence with feline features, and their eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of wisdom. The lead figure, whose fur was a deep golden color marked with subtle stripes, approached Sarah with measured steps. When it spoke, the words came through Ghost, who served as a living translator between species. Greetings, Sarah Chun. Ghost's mental voice carried the alien's formal tone. I am Veltar, speaker for the 3rd Kithera Exploration Fleet. We have waited long to meet the one who showed kindness to our enhanced guardian. Sarah fought to keep her voice steady. Welcome to Earth, Veltar. I'm honored to represent humanity in this first contact, though I'm not sure I'm qualified for something this important. The alien's response came with what Sarah could only interpret as amusement. Qualification is not measured by titles or positions among our people. It is measured by actions taken when no one is watching and no reward is expected. You sacrificed much to save a single injured creature. This tells us more about your character than any resume. Through Ghost translation, Sarah learned that the Kethera had been observing human development for over 3 centuries. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, had seen humanity's capacity for both incredible cruelty and remarkable compassion. The test with Ghost was one of many they had conducted, but Sarah's response was unique. Other humans encountered our enhanced guardians, Veltar explained through Ghost. Some ignored them. Some tried to capture them for profit. Some killed them out of fear. You alone chose to heal without asking for anything in return. The second alien, whose fur was a silvery blue, stepped forward. I am Kessera, historical observer. We have recorded human progress since your species first used tools. You have potential we have seen in few races, but also destructive tendencies that concern us. Sarah felt the weight of representing her entire species. We know we have flaws. We fight too much. We damage our environment. We often choose short-term gains over long-term wisdom. But we're capable of growth, of learning from our mistakes. The third alien, smaller than the others with distinctive black markings around intelligent green eyes, moved closer. Sarah sensed a different energy from this one, more intense, more focused. I am Zaylok, strategic assessor. The alien communicated through Ghost. The question before us is not whether humans can grow, but whether they will choose to. Your species stand at a crossroads. The technology we could share would advance your civilization by centuries, but it could also be turned into weapons that would devastate not only Earth, but potentially threaten others. Sarah understood the dilemma. You're deciding whether to help us or leave us alone. More than that, Veltar responded. We're deciding whether to invite humanity into a galactic community of peaceful species or to establish a quarantine around your solar system until you either evolve beyond your aggressive tendencies or destroy yourselves. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just first contact. It was a test that would determine humanity's future among the stars. She thought about Director Hayes and the military forces maintaining their perimeter, about the world leaders who wanted to control this situation, about the elements within various governments who saw alien technology as a path to military dominance. What would it take for humanity to pass your evaluation? She asked. Kess-Era shared complex images through Ghost that showed civilizations across the galaxy, some that had successfully joined the galactic community and others that had failed the transition. The successful species all shared common traits. They had learned to resolve conflicts without violence. They protected their environments instead of exploiting them, and they demonstrated genuine care for other forms of life. The path is not easy, Zaylok warned. It requires fundamental changes in how your species approaches cooperation, resource distribution, and territorial disputes. Many civilizations cannot make this transition. They choose the familiar patterns of competition and conflict over the uncertain path of true cooperation. Sarah thought about Ghost, about the choice she had made in the Amazon without considering the consequences. But it starts with individual decisions, doesn't it? People choosing compassion when it would be easier to walk away. Exactly, Veltar confirmed, and Sarah sensed approval from all three aliens. Civilization-level change begins with individual moral choices. Your willingness to help our guardian suggests that humans are capable of the empathy required for peaceful coexistence. Ghost pressed closer to Sarah, sharing new images. She saw vast cities that floated above alien worlds, technologies that cleaned polluted atmospheres, medical advances that eliminated disease and extended life, transportation systems that made interstellar travel as simple as crossing a city. All of this could be humanity's future if they proved worthy of it. But the images also showed the consequences of failure. Worlds stripped bare by warfare, species that had destroyed themselves through unchecked aggression, civilizations that had collapsed under the weight of their own violence. The choice was clear and terrifying. How long do we have to prove ourselves? Sarah asked. That depends partly on how your governments respond to our presence here today, Zaylok replied. We have detected military forces gathering around this location. Some of your leaders wish to capture us for interrogation and technological exploitation. This would immediately end any possibility of peaceful contact. Sarah's heart sank. She had feared this exact scenario. Can you defend yourselves? Our technology is far beyond yours, Veltar acknowledged. But using it aggressively would violate our own principles. If attacked, we would simply leave and never return. Your species would forfeit its opportunity for advancement. Through Ghost's enhanced senses, Sarah became aware of movement beyond the visible perimeter. Military vehicles were indeed positioning themselves, and she could detect the tension in the soldiers' radio communications. Someone was planning to make a move against the alien delegation. We need to establish formal diplomatic protocols immediately, Sarah said urgently. I need to contact world leaders and explain the situation. If any government tries to capture you, it will destroy everything. Kesera shared an image that made Sarah's blood run cold. Satellite views showing military buildups near alien ships over other major cities. The pattern was consistent across multiple nations. Humanity's first instinct was to treat the visitors as potential threats to be contained or weapons to be acquired. This is exactly what we feared, Zayalok observed. Your species' default response to the unknown is military preparation. This mindset must change if you were to join the galactic community. Sarah felt Ghost's anxiety as he translated increasingly urgent communications from the aliens. They were preparing to abort the contact and return to their ships. Once they left, the opportunity would be lost forever. Please, Sarah said, stepping closer to Veltar. Give us a chance to prove we can do better. Not all humans think like the military leaders. There are millions of us who want peace, who want to learn and grow. Don't judge our entire species by the actions of a few. But those few control your weapons and your governments, Zayalok pointed out. How can individual goodwill overcome institutional aggression? Sarah thought frantically, aware that every second counted. Then, inspiration struck, the same way it started, with individual choices. I choose to stand with you, to advocate for peaceful contact. Others will make the same choice when they understand what's at stake. Give us time to prove that humanity can choose wisdom over fear. Veltar conferred with the others in rapid, untranslatable sounds while Ghost provided Sarah with emotional impressions of their debate. The aliens were genuinely divided about humanity's potential. Finally, Veltar spoke again through Ghost. We will give your species one opportunity to demonstrate its commitment to peaceful coexistence. You, Sarah Chun, will serve as our primary contact with human leadership. You will have 30 of your days to convince your governments to establish formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than military posturing. If any nation attempts to capture or attack our delegations during this period, Kesera added, we will consider it representative of your species' true intentions and will implement the quarantine immediately. Sarah felt the enormous weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The future of human civilization now depended on her ability to convince world leaders to approach this contact with wisdom instead of aggression. I accept the responsibility, she said formally. I'll do everything in my power to help humanity pass this test. Zayalok stepped forward and placed a device in Sarah's hands. It looked like a simple crystal, but she could feel it humming with energy. This communication device will allow direct contact with our vessels. Use it when your leaders are ready for formal negotiations. But remember, Sarah Chun, we will be watching. One act of aggression, one attempt at military exploitation, and this opportunity ends forever. As the aliens began to withdraw toward their ship, Ghost looked at Sarah with those distinctive pink eyes. Their mental connection carried a complex message. Pride in her courage, confidence in her abilities, but also concern about the challenges ahead. Will you stay with me? She asked him mentally. His response was immediate and certain. Always. We are bonded now across species. Where you go, I will follow. The alien ship lifted off with the same silent grace it had shown in landing, leaving Sarah alone in the Nevada desert with Ghost and the crystal device that represented humanity's future. She could hear approaching vehicles as the military perimeter collapsed inward. In 30 days, she would have to convince the leaders of every major nation to choose cooperation over conquest, trust over suspicion, and wisdom over fear. The future of her species depended on her ability to awaken the same compassion in humanity's leaders that she had shown to an injured leopard in the Amazon. The real work was just beginning. 27 days had passed since the Nevada meeting, and Sarah Chun felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The temporary United Nations facility in Geneva buzzed with activity as representatives from every major nation debated humanity's response to the Kethera ultimatum. Sarah sat at the head of a conference table that had seen more heated arguments in the past month than most diplomatic venues experienced in years. Ghost lay beside her chair, his white coat a stark contrast to the dark suits and military uniforms surrounding them. His presence had become essential not just for communication with the aliens, but as a calming influence during the most volatile negotiations. Dr. Chun, General Morrison from the Joint Chiefs leaned forward aggressively. You're asking us to trust aliens who could destroy our civilization with technology we can't even understand. That's not diplomacy, it's surrender. With respect, General, Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady despite her exhaustion. The Kethera have already demonstrated they could eliminate us if they chose to. The fact that they're offering partnership instead proves their peaceful intentions. Russian Representative Dmitry Petrov shook his head. Or it proves they need something from us. No species develops interstellar technology without becoming militaristic. This could be elaborate psychological warfare. Sarah felt Ghost's tension through their mental link. The Leopard was picking up on aggressive emotions from the military representatives, and his enhanced senses detected preparations that worried him deeply. Hidden military assets were moving into position around not just this facility, but near the alien ships hovering over major cities worldwide. Through the communication crystal the Kethera had given her, Sarah had been in regular contact with Veltar. The aliens were growing increasingly concerned about humanity's inability to reach consensus. Several nations had already attempted to shoot down the hovering ships with advanced weaponry, all of which had failed harmlessly against alien defensive systems. But each attack had pushed the Kethera closer to abandoning the contact entirely. The Chinese delegation has a proposal, announced Ambassador Li Wei, sliding a document across the table. Joint International Task Force to study the aliens' technology. Share all discoveries equally among participating nations. Sarah scanned the proposal and felt her heart sink. It was essentially a plan to capture and dissect alien technology for military applications, dressed up in diplomatic language. This is exactly what they warned us against, she said. They're not here to provide us with weapons or technology to gain advantage over each other. They're offering partnership based on our ability to evolve beyond competitive thinking. Idealistic nonsense, General Morrison snapped. Every civilization that has ever existed has been built on competitive advantage. You're asking us to ignore human nature itself. Ghost raised his head and fixed the general with those penetrating pink eyes. Through their mental link, Sarah sensed the leopard's frustration. The enhanced intelligence the Kethera had given him allowed him to understand human speech perfectly, and he found their military posturing both primitive and dangerous. Sarah's communication device chimed softly. She activated it, and Veltar's translated voice filled the room. Sarah Chun, we have detected significant military movement around our vessels. Are your leaders planning aggressive action against our delegation? The room fell silent as every representative realized they were speaking directly with an alien consciousness. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Veltar, there are elements within our governments that view your presence as a threat to be neutralized rather than an opportunity for growth. I'm trying to convince them otherwise, but I'm running out of time. We are aware, Veltar replied. Our sensors detect weapon systems targeting our ships from 17 different locations. This suggests that cooperation is not your species' primary instinct. General Morrison leaned toward the device. We have a right to defend ourselves against unknown technology. Your presence here is an act of aggression in itself. General, please, Sarah began, but Ghost was already on his feet, moving toward Morrison with unmistakable intent. The leopard didn't threaten, but his presence radiated an authority that made the military officer step back. Veltar's response came with what Sarah had learned to recognize as deep sadness. General Morrison, our presence here is an invitation, not an invasion. We have observed your species for centuries and know of your capacity for both cooperation and violence. We had hoped to appeal to your better nature. Better nature doesn't win wars, Morrison replied defiantly. No, Veltar agreed, but it wins peace. And peace is what we offer. The communication was interrupted by urgent alerts on multiple phones around the table. Sarah's device immediately connected her to Director Hayes at the intelligence facility. Dr. Chun, we have a problem. Hayes' voice was tense. NATO forces are moving on the London ship in 30 minutes. The order came from the highest levels, and I can't stop it. They're planning to use experimental electromagnetic pulse weapons to disable the vessel and board it. Sarah's blood ran cold. Through Ghost, she immediately contacted Veltar. You need to move your ship immediately. NATO is planning an attack. We are aware, Veltar replied calmly. All of our vessels detected the approach simultaneously. This appears to be a coordinated global assault. Around the conference table, representatives were receiving similar emergency briefings. Sarah realized with growing horror that while they had been debating diplomacy in Geneva, military leaders had been planning a simultaneous strike against all alien vessels. This is madness, she said, standing. If you attack them, they'll leave and never return. Humanity will have lost its only chance at joining a galactic civilization. Or we'll capture their technology and advance our civilization by centuries without having to trust aliens, General Morrison replied. Sometimes you have to take what you need. Ghost moved to Sarah's side, and through their mental link, she felt his communication with the Kethera ships. The aliens were not preparing to flee. Instead, they were powering up systems that Sarah sensed were defensive in nature, but far beyond human understanding. Veltar, she said urgently into her communication device, please don't abandon us because of what a few military leaders are doing. There are billions of humans who want peace. Sarah Chun, Veltar's response carried genuine regret. The pattern is clear across your planet. When faced with the unknown, your species defaults to military solutions. This is exactly why most civilizations fail our evaluation. The room erupted as military representatives coordinated with their respective governments. Sarah felt helpless as she watched humanity's future slipping away. Then, Ghost pressed against her leg, sharing something through their mental link that made her understand what she had to do. General Morrison, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. I'm making you a formal challenge under the authority granted to me as Earth's first contact representative. The room fell silent. Sarah continued, the Kethera have agreed to judge our species based on the choices of individuals, not just governments. I'm challenging your authority to speak for humanity in this matter. You have no such authority, Morrison replied dismissively. Ghost moved between Sarah and the general, and suddenly, the room filled with the low rumble of the leopard's enhanced vocalizations. The sound was unlike anything a normal big cat could produce, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. Actually, she does. Veltar's voice came through the communication device with new authority. We recognize Sarah Chun as humanity's chosen representative based on her demonstrated compassion. General Morrison, by what right do you claim to speak for your entire species? By the right of superior firepower, Morrison replied. Then, you have chosen, Veltar said with finality. Your military forces are now targeting our vessels. We consider this a declaration of hostile intent. Sarah felt the moment when everything changed. Through Ghost's enhanced senses, she detected massive energy buildups from all the alien ships simultaneously. But, rather than weapons charging, she realized they were preparing to depart. Wait, she called desperately. Give me one more chance. Let me prove that humanity can choose differently. How can individual choice overcome institutional military action? Veltar asked. Sarah looked around the room at the representatives of Earth's most powerful nations, all of them now coordinating military strikes against beings who had offered them partnership among the stars. Then she looked at Ghost, whose pink eyes held infinite patience and understanding. Because some choices change everything, she said, reaching for the communication device. Veltar, I formally renounce my citizenship in any Earth nation that participates in military action against your people. I claim the right to speak as a representative of individual human conscience rather than any government. The room exploded in shocked protests, but Sarah continued, Ghost, and I will board your vessel as voluntary ambassadors. If humanity's governments choose war, at least let them know that some of us chose peace. General Morrison stepped toward her. Dr. Chun, I'm placing you under arrest for treason. Ghost's response was immediate and unmistakable. The leopard moved between Sarah and the general, and for the first time since the Amazon, Sarah saw him bare his teeth. The enhancement technology had given him capabilities far beyond any normal predator, and everyone in the room suddenly understood that challenging him would be a fatal mistake. You will not touch the speaker. Ghost's mental voice carried to Sarah with protective fury. She has chosen honor where others chose fear. Through her communication device, Veltar spoke with what sounded like renewed hope. Sarah Chun, your choice has been noted. We will delay our departure to allow you to board our vessel. Perhaps individual courage can indeed overcome collective failure. Outside, Sarah could hear the approaching aircraft that would soon attempt humanity's first act of aggression against an alien species. She had minutes to choose between loyalty to Earth's governments and loyalty to Earth's future. Ghost pressed against her side, sharing confidence and determination through their bond. Together, they would make one last attempt to save humanity from its own worst instincts. The choice was clear, even if the consequences were terrifying. Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the Kethera vessel, watching Earth shrink below them as they rose above the atmosphere. Through the transparent hull material, she could see the scattered lights of human civilization spread across the dark continents. Ghost pressed against her side, his white fur reflecting the soft blue glow of the alien ship's lighting systems. The electromagnetic pulse attacks failed completely, Veltar reported as he joined them at the observation window. Your military technology cannot penetrate our defensive systems. But the attempt itself confirmed our assessment about humanity's default responses to the unknown. Sarah felt a deep sadness as she watched her home planet fall away. So you're leaving permanently? Not exactly, Kessera said, approaching from the bridge area. Your choice to renounce governmental authority and speak as an individual has given us something we rarely encounter. You represent proof that individual moral courage can overcome institutional conditioning. Through Ghost's enhanced communication abilities, Sarah sensed activity throughout the alien fleet. Rather than departing Earth's solar system, the ships were moving into higher orbits, positioning themselves beyond the reach of human weapons, but close enough to continue observation. We've decided to implement what we call the Individual Initiative Protocol, Zayalok explained, sharing complex images through Ghost that showed similar situations on other worlds. Instead of dealing with Earth's governments, we will establish contact with individuals who demonstrate the qualities necessary for peaceful coexistence. Sarah understood immediately. You're going to bypass the military and political establishments entirely. Precisely, Veltar confirma. Throughout human history, meaningful change has often begun with individuals who chose to act according to their conscience rather than their government's policies. We will seek out these individuals and offer them limited contact and education. The images Ghost shared showed the plan in detail. Small groups of humans would be invited aboard Kethera vessels for education about galactic civilization, peaceful technologies for healing and environmental restoration, and, most importantly, guidance on how to build consensus for change within human society. But the governments won't allow this, Sarah protested. They'll try to stop any contact between aliens and private citizens. Let them try, Zayalok replied with what Sarah had learned to recognize as Kethera amusement. Our technology is sufficient to protect those who choose cooperation over conflict. And we have learned much about human nature from observing your response to Ghost. Sarah looked down at the leopard, who had been the catalyst for everything that followed. What exactly was the test? I mean, what did saving Ghost prove about humanity? Veltar shared a complex emotional transmission through Ghost that conveyed deep satisfaction and hope. Many species we evaluate focus primarily on their own kind. They will show compassion to their family groups, their tribes, even their nations, but they view other species as resources to be exploited. Your willingness to sacrifice your career and resources for a single injured animal demonstrated something rare: universal empathy. Universal empathy, Sarah asked. The ability to extend moral consideration beyond your own species, Sarah explained. This quality is essential for membership in a galactic community that includes hundreds of different biological forms. A species that cannot value life unlike themselves will inevitably become predators among the stars. Ghost pressed closer to Sarah, sharing pride and affection through their mental bond. Through him, she learned that her rescue had been observed not just by the Kethera, but by a dozen other member species of the galactic community. All had been waiting to see if humanity possessed the moral foundation necessary for peaceful contact. The enhancement technology we gave Ghost created a permanent bond between you, Veltar continued. This bond allows us to monitor human development through your experiences. As you interact with other humans, we learn about your species' capacity for growth and change. Sarah realized the full implications. I'm not just an ambassador. I'm a test case for whether individual humans can influence larger society. Exactly. And your success over the past month has been encouraging. Despite massive government resistance, you convinced 12 world leaders to consider peaceful alternatives. More importantly, your story has inspired thousands of private citizens to contact us directly through the communication networks we established. Through the ship systems, Ghost showed Sarah images from around Earth. In major cities worldwide, groups of humans were gathering to demand that their governments choose diplomacy over military action. Scientists, teachers, doctors, and ordinary citizens were organizing peaceful demonstrations calling for cooperation with the alien visitors. The response has exceeded our most optimistic projections, Zaylock observed. Individual moral courage appears to be contagious among humans under the right circumstances. Sarah watched the growing movement on Earth with amazement. They're listening. People are actually choosing peace over fear. Some are, Veltar cautioned, but others are becoming more entrenched in their aggressive positions. We detect military buildups in several nations as governments prepare for extended conflict. Your species is dividing into two distinct groups: those who choose growth and those who choose familiar patterns of dominance and control. The observation was sobering. Sarah could see on the ship's displays that while peace movements were growing in many cities, military recruitment and weapon development were accelerating in response. Humanity was fracturing along philosophical lines that would determine its future. What happens next? She asked. That depends on you, Sarah replied. We are prepared to begin formal education of the humans who have chosen peaceful contact. They will learn about galactic civilization, advanced medical and environmental technologies, and methods of consensus building that can help their societies evolve beyond conflict-based governance. But, Zaylock added with characteristic directness, this process will likely take several generations, and it will face constant resistance from those who profit from humanity's current systems of competition and conflict. Ghost shared images of other worlds that had successfully navigated this transition. The process was indeed long and difficult, often spanning centuries, as peaceful elements within a civilization gradually demonstrated the superiority of cooperative approaches over competitive ones. Some species never make the transition, Veltar admitted. They become permanently divided between those who join galactic civilization and those who remain isolated by their own aggressive tendencies. The choice for humanity is still being made. Sarah looked out at Earth again, understanding that this was just the beginning of a process that would define her species' future. Will I be able to return to Earth? Of course, Veltar replied. In fact, your return is essential. You will carry knowledge and technologies that can help the cooperative elements of human society demonstrate viable alternatives to their current systems. But, Sarah Chun, You must understand that you will face opposition from those who see change as a threat to their power. Ghost pressed against her with protective determination. Through their bond, she felt his commitment to staying by her side regardless of the dangers they would face. The leopard you save in the Amazon has become something unique in galactic history, Cassera observed. An enhanced guardian who has chosen to bond permanently with the individual who showed him compassion. He will be your protector and translator as you work to guide human development. Sarah knelt beside Ghost, looking into those distinctive pink eyes that had started this entire journey. Are you ready for this? It's going to be dangerous, and we might not succeed. Ghost's mental response carried absolute certainty. We saved each other in the Amazon. Now we save our worlds. As the Kethera vessel began its descent back toward Earth, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility balanced by unshakable determination. She was returning to a world divided between those who chose fear and those who chose hope, carrying knowledge that could transform human civilization if enough people were willing to embrace it. The journey that had begun with a single act of compassion toward an injured animal had become humanity's path to the stars. Whether that path led to galactic citizenship or permanent isolation would depend on the choices millions of individuals made in the years ahead. Ghost pressed closer as Earth grew larger in the viewport, and Sarah felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The bond forged in the Amazon between a human scientist and an alien-enhanced leopard had already changed the course of history. Now it was time to discover just how far that change could reach. The real adventure was about to begin.